The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Oxendine, president of My Health Career Navigator, and I want to welcome you to Informational Interviews for Grad School and your job search. This is the first of a series of many webinars we're going to be putting on this fall for those of you that are interested in either getting a great job that aligns with your authentic health career or getting into the graduate school that you really want to get into. And tonight we're going to start with something that is really important for both of those interests that you have. It's informational interviews, and it's something that we get a lot of questions about, and we had many requests for doing a webinar on this topic. So we're going to talk about informational interviews, how it relates to grad school and your job search. I'm going to go through a series of slides that hopefully will be helpful for you, and then we're going to leave ample time for questions at the end. The questions are going to, you can email your questions or put them in the chat, actually, and Christina Newvin from MyHCN will be helping ask those questions, and then Sunny Bernard, who's part of our MyHCN team, will also be part of answering the questions with me. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So the overview of what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what is an informational interview, why is and when are they important, whom should you interview, how do you set up and conduct interviews, which questions you ask, how do you follow up, very importantly, how do you follow up and stay connected to the people once you've made a great impression, and what do you have going for you. Sometimes people are shy about doing the informational interviews because they're not sure that they deserve to have these informational interviews, or people would want to talk to them, which in fact is just the opposite. People are really excited. They're busy, but they're really excited to talk to you and to find a talented person who might become part of their organization or become a mentee or become a partner in some way going forward. So let's dive in. All right, sorry for some technical difficulties here. There we go. So what is an informational interview? And really, and this is a phrase that people in the industry really know. And it is a code for saying that you're not coming to ask them for a job. You're coming to ask them for information and to make connection with them. And that's important, because if you're coming to ask people for a job, then they're going to be much more protective and perhaps not be that interested in meeting with you because it's more pressure on them because they think that you need something from them, and you're going to be disappointed if you don't have a job or an internship or something like that. And really, this is about providing information, and it is something that most people in the industry have done themselves. When I talk to people who have great jobs and I've asked them, how did you get your job? They'll say, I did 50 informational interviews. And it's a very common thing. So it's not out of the ordinary to ask people about it. It's really an informal interview. It's not a formal interview. And it's there for the purpose of getting information for you about that person and their path and their job and the kind of things that they do, or more about the profession that you're interested in. You want to learn more about what it's really like to be a doctor, what it's really like to be in health policy, a community organizer. Maybe you're getting their information about a particular type of organization that you want to work with. Today I've had 2 Berkeley MPH graduate students in my office saying, you know, gosh, I know the kind of skills that I have and the kind of functions and role that I want to play, but I'm not sure which organization that I want to do it in. And so I gave them people to contact to do informational interviews to go get exposure to find out, would I really like to work in a health system? What about a community health center? What about a public health department? And to explore those kinds of settings. You can also use this if you're interested in going to graduate school to do informational interviews with people who lead those programs to find out about the program that you're interested in, the school that you're interested in, what they're looking for, how to apply, how to be competitive, those kinds of things. Sometimes you get information about the community that you may want to work in. It's really about getting some insights about your careers and opportunities for you, maybe creating opportunities. Like it's not about getting a job or an internship, but you know what? It's an informational interview could turn into an opportunity, and very often does, to get a job or an internship, because the people will like you. They'll see your talents, and they'll say, by the way, we do have this position coming up that might be really a good fit for you. Or a friend of mine is going to have a position that's going to be coming up, and let me connect you to her. And so that's a good thing to get out of it. And hopefully it's a networking opportunity. Hopefully you make a good impression or a good connection, and that can't always happen, but oftentimes it does. And now this person becomes part of your network, and you keep in touch with them. That's why I love informational interviews. It's what I call a twofer, right? You get exposure, and you get build your network as well. And not only do you get a network potentially with the person that you're interviewing with, but you always want to find out, are there people in their network who, now knowing what your interests are and what your abilities are, that they can refer you to for possible networking opportunities. So this is what an informational interview is. It's a very common thing. And why and when are they important? So they're important because of some of the things we talked about. On the left, on one side, we've got it provides exposure to what's out there. It's something that's better than reading about something in an article or hearing your professor talk about it, because these are people who are actually doing the work, and they can tell you what it's really like today, and they can have a good idea about where things are going. I always get, out of the informational interviews I've done, I always get at least one cool gem for a career insight that's helpful to me, and helps me begin to put a picture of the direction that I want to go in. It might help with packaging. If you talk to people about graduate school and you find out what the professor in the health behavior program says that they're looking for, then in your statement of purpose and in your resume and in your personal statement and all those kind of things, you now have a better idea about what to put in there to be a competitive applicant that will be a good fit with that program. It might help you with decision making. There have been times when I've been deciding about changing my career path, or taking a certain kind of job, or going into a particular graduate program, and the people that I talked to were really instrumental in my decision making. I did an informational interview once when I was accepted to a doctoral program, and I was really having a hard time deciding, and a person who ran a doctoral program in another school told me, you need to ask them, what do people do at the end of that program from their school, and have them give you examples. And when I did that, it turned out that it really wasn't the program that I wanted to go into. So it can help with your decision making. It's about building relationships and making connections with the people who you meet in a non-threatening setting. It's about creating opportunity for yourself, and it's a way to differentiate yourself by taking the initiative to go do an informational interview with somebody. You are different than the people who are just sitting back and waiting for jobs to come along that they can apply to. Or by taking the initiative to do an informational interview with somebody at a school of public health or a medical school or a business school, you're different. You now know they know you. There's a name when you submit your application. You have more insights on what to put forward. You've made a good impression on them. And you can do informational interviews when it relates to your career direction, a job or internship search, graduate school, networking. You find mentors, and you want to do this as often as possible. It's also something that people do who are working to help them with a particular job or a particular direction that they want to go in. I have a new role here in working on developing our executive education. So I'll go do an informational interview with somebody on campus who also does executive education, and that might become a new partnership. Or I'll go do informational interviews with some target companies that I'm not there to sell them on our executive education. I'm there to find out what are their needs and what are they looking for and who do they already use and those kinds of things. And that helps me then potentially build a collaboration with them. So this is a key thing that helps make the world go round. You should do it as often as possible. I often get questioned about, well, how many informational interviews should I do? And the question is, well, how many do you need to do in order to help with what your objectives are for the interviews and help build your network? I always say you should do as many as you can. I always encourage people that are in a job search or graduate school search to do, or trying to set their career direction, to do one informational interview a week. Because think of it, at the end of a year, you've got 50 people that would be in your network. I'll give you a couple weeks off for that. But if you just do one a month, that would be a big thing to do. And it's something that you can do. I often get asked, well, if I'm really looking for a job, should I tell people I'm doing this for a job, or should I say it's an informational interview? And I encourage you to still have it be an informational interview and still focus on the information and the relationship part of it. If you feel like you've made a good connection at the end, and you might say, well, you know, I am going to be looking for a job, or I am going to be looking for an internship. Do you have any suggestions or advice about that? That's a way to help to bring the job search into it. But if you lead with, I'm coming to look for a job, that's going to be more difficult. And you should also just be sure that if you do bring your resume with you, just in case people want to see it, because sometimes an informational interview can turn into a job interview, or if you have your resume there, then people can see what you have and move on. I wouldn't necessarily send it ahead of time. I would bring it along, or you can certainly send it afterwards. Some people might ask to see your resume ahead of time, and that's okay, because they want to get a little bit of background on you. So that's why and when. So whom should you interview? I think people that you that inspire you or that you admire would be good, particularly people who come on their guest speakers in your class, or you go to a conference and there's a really dynamic guest speaker, or keynote speaker or workshop leader or something like that. Good opportunity for you to be able to then go up to them and say, I really enjoyed your presentation. I'm very interested in what you and your organization do. Would it be possible for me to schedule an informational interview with you? And great to do it in person. They probably won't schedule it right then, but they may give you their card, or they say contact my assistant, or shoot me an email or something like that, and you should follow up right afterwards so that's fresh on their mind and be able to follow up to do that. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of courage to be able to do that. There's a movie called We Bought a Zoo that says sometimes you just need 20 seconds of courage. So approaching somebody, I've done it many times when I'm uncomfortable. I still introduce myself, I ask for the interview, and it's turned out great. Sometimes it's people in different geographic areas that you might be interested in, and the kind of organizations and the professions you might be interested in. So for example, I have students here in Berkeley who want to do an internship in Washington, D.C. So in about November or so, they'll go to Washington, D.C. They'll tell people they're going to be coming, and they line up informational interviews for a couple of days while they're going to be there. They get the information, they make a good contact, and they do that in November so that those organizations can start thinking about them for internships in the summer. So when they're looking more in January, February, March, they can follow up with people to see what's possible. So there may be different geographic areas. Those of you who want to move to a different place, and it's a good way to set up the interviews to email people and say, I'm going to be coming to town, 3 weeks from now or a month from now. Might I have an informational interview with you? Sometimes it frees up their calendar more than if you're just calling them up. You want to interview graduate programs, and this could be faculty, it could be students, it could be alumni of that program. It could be the admissions director, if they'll let you. It could be alumni from the school or the program that you went to. Sometimes that's a warm lead, and those are great people to interview with. Sometimes it could be partners, or sometimes you get referrals from people like me or others, or faculty members, or people that you work with. So, or sometimes it could be in professional associations, people that you meet. So these are all people that you can do informational interviews with. They should be people that are in the kind of organizations that you're interested in or professions that you're considering. Should help you clarify your direction and help you make contacts to go down that path. It can be organizations that you don't even have any idea what they do. You're not sure you want to be interested in them, but it just costs you some time to go find out about it. I encourage you to be open to organizations that you might not otherwise think about, because this is a free way to get some really good exposure to something that you might not even know. I have students all the time come back to me saying, I went to talk to that organization. I didn't think I'd be interested in it, but now I'm really interested because I learned a lot more about what they do. So how do you set up these interviews? Sometimes it can be that somebody gives you a warm lead, and that could be that someone you know refers you to that person. They might make an e-introduction for you, or they might say you can use their name. Go ahead and email them. Use my name in the subject line. Say that Jeff Oxendine, referred me. I'd like to set up an informational interview. Sometimes you might identify people through LinkedIn and ask them for an informational interview. By the way, you should have a good LinkedIn profile, a professional one with a nice picture and with all your information in there, so that when people do look you up on LinkedIn, you've got the profile that you really want. Or when you reach out to people and ask for informational interviews or be connected, that you're somebody they want to connect with. Sometimes it's just an email or a phone call from somebody that you meet or you're referred to. Sometimes it might be hard to get through to people, so you've got to go through their administrative assistant, and just be very polite. And all these things, you want to be polite, not entitled, not demanding, be flexible and open. That, I'd like to set up a time with you sometime in the next few weeks, sometime in the next couple of months, something like that. Not, hey, gee, I'd like to meet with you on Friday, that kind of a thing. And so imply your flexibility, do it around their schedule. Typically you ask for 30 minutes for an informational interview, but 30 to 60 is fine. Oftentimes if you start with 30 and the people are enjoying it, they might go to 60, but at a minimum you want to see if you can get 30 minutes. I think you should do this in person, because part of this is making a connection with people, and I think you make a better connection with people in person than you do via the phone. And you might do it with Skype if people live out of the area. But I think the more that you can think about making a good personal connection with people on this, the better. If it has to be by phone, if that's all that you can get with somebody, that could be okay too. And then again, if you meet somebody along the way at an event that's speaking, or that's somebody that you're sitting next to, I've had people I've sat next to on the plane who turned out to be in the health field, and I get their card and I do an informational interview with them. Just all these are different ways that you go about setting it up. So I always get the question of, which questions do I ask? That seems to be a daunting kind of a thing. But I think it's important, first of all, to think about what your objectives are for the informational interview, because that will help influence which questions that you want to ask. Is it really there that you're coming because you want to learn more about that particular organization, or do you really want to learn more about that person and their job? What is it that are you really there about helping you with advice to make an important career decision? Think about, first of all, what your objectives are, and then you need to start with an elevator speech, a brief one, about yourself, maybe 30 seconds to a minute and a half, to be able to briefly say, I am a student at X school. I'm studying public health. My interests are in health policy and management, but I'm also interested in community health and health equity. I'm going to be graduating in May, and so I'm trying to figure out the career direction that best suits me, and I'm trying to think about which kind of organizations I may want to work in, and what kind of graduate school I may want to go in the future. Something like that. And then you state your intentions. And so I'd like to come. My intention in speaking to you today is that I'm hoping that I can learn more about your organization and your role and how you got there, and I'd like to also learn more about what you all are looking for in terms of people who might work with you, and then what advice you would have for me for my career and graduate school direction. If you're interviewing with a graduate program, maybe you just say, I'm really interested in your graduate program. I'd like to learn more about the program and what things that you're looking for in your applicants and how I can strengthen my preparation, something like that. Do your homework on the organization and the people first, so that you're not asking them things that can be found on the website easily or in their brochures. That'll be annoying and is a waste of the person's precious time. It'll also give you good questions to ask the people if you've looked at their bio, if you've looked at their profiles, if read something about what they do. Sometimes you just start by asking people, well, just tell me a little about your background and how you got to the role that you're in and what path that you took and what kind of choices that you made. That's always a good one. People like talking about themselves and their background. I always tell people that at the end of the day, oftentimes you don't have to say anything and the people will like you for the informational interview because they like talking about themselves and their organization for the time that you were there. You might ask them about what are some of the challenges in their roles, what are some of the ways that they get satisfaction, what are some of the opportunities that they see going forward. You might ask about where they see the field going in the future, how you can prepare. You should always ask for some advice about you and opportunities. And if you feel like you've made a good connection with them, you might ask, well, gee, is your organization going to be offering some internships in the next summer? Are you going to be offering any kinds of jobs? And a big thing is to ask, are there other people that you think I might, knowing what I'm interested in now, are there other people in your organization or in your network that you think it would be useful for me to speak with? And if so, if they volunteer that, you might say, well, gee, would it be okay if I tell them that you referred me, or might you do any introduction or something like that? So I think that's important. And then you could even ask, gee, is there a way I can just continue to communicate you in the future? I really appreciated this interview. It was really helpful to me. How can I continue to communicate with you? That might be something to ask as well. How do you follow up and stay connected, which is really important? Getting your foot in the door with an organization or an individual is a great thing, and you want to make sure that even in addition to the career insights that you get, that you don't lose the value of that. So you do always follow up with a thank you note. A handwritten note is a really nice gesture, but you can also follow up with at least an email thank you written in a very professional way, and maybe referencing a couple of the things that they said to you that stood out to you, or things that you're going to follow up with, is really helpful. If you feel like you made a nice connection with them, see if you can link in with them shortly afterwards. And then I think it's important that if they gave you a referral or some advice, follow up on it, and then circle back with them and update them to say, maybe it's a few months later, well, gee, you referred me to, I had a student do this recently, a former student do this to me. She said, Jeff, gosh, you referred me to Dr. So-and-so at this hospital, and it turns out that she offered me a job, and I'm going to be starting there, in October. And thank you so much for that connection. So that's a good way to close the loop. It makes the person feel good that they helped you, that they helped their colleague that they referred you to, and it keeps them interested in your future and in your network. You might at some point, and you don't even need to have a response to your updates at some time. You might just send them an update saying, no response needed, just want to let you know that I applied to these 5 graduate programs and I'm waiting to hear back. Or, gee, I got into the graduate program I was really most interested in. How about that? Very exciting. And don't require them to respond, but keep them, keep you on their radar screen. Some of them you may want to meet again after some period of time. They may ask you if you'd like to meet again. It might be a good connection, such a good connection that they may become your mentor. Some of you could just say, gosh, at some point in the future I'd love to meet up again after I've followed up on the things you recommended. And then, you can apply for a position or for that particular graduate program that you did informational interviews with when it's appropriate. And you want to end up having some kind of a system for managing all these different people that you informational interview with and capturing the nuggets of wisdom that you get and the contacts they provide you, and keeping it such that you can follow up with them easily for updates, that you can just keep track of all the different people that are in your network now through informational interviews. And then what do you have going for you? You all have a lot going for you. As I mentioned, that everyone has done and does these informational interviews. Very common thing. So asking somebody for this is not an unusual and a burdensome request. People are going to be very busy. They might reluctantly agree. Not taking it personally is important for you. It might just be that that person is overwhelmed and has a really busy schedule. And so do keep that in mind. But people in the health field tend to be people who like to help and mentor others. They've been helped themselves. And so I encourage you to, that you have that going for you. You're bright and talented. Some of you are young and upcoming professionals who organizations are looking for, and they want to hire you. And some of you are more experienced and more senior professionals that organizations are looking for and want to hire you. Keep in mind, we have a real talent issue in the health and public health field right now. There is not enough talented, diverse, capable people that are out there, and so organizations will agree to do informational interviews because you might just be exactly the kind of person that they're looking for, either now or in the future. And it might just be a breath of fresh air. I get people sending me emails all the time saying, Jeff, thank you for referring Susie to me. You know, I had spent my day laying off people and cutting budgets and kicking people out of their space, and to have a chance to meet one of these bright young students today made my day. Thank you so much for referring that person to me. You know, you'll make good connections by doing this, both personal and professional connections, and you will make a good connection because you all are good at doing that kind of thing. You have interest in them, their organization or project. People like to hear about that. They like to see the passion. You can take initiative. I mentioned the 20 seconds of courage. Remember that sometimes that's all it takes to reach out and make a really valuable contact. There's a story that I have from a student at Harvard several years ago. A CEO of a major health organization came to speak to her class, and the person was really dynamic. Everybody was impressed, but a little bit intimidated. He made an offer. He said, if any of you would like to go out to lunch with me, I'd be happy to take you to lunch. So she was nervous about it, but she went up, she gave him, she asked for his card, she followed up, and he took her out to lunch. And it turns out that he said, well, you know what, I've been making that offer for 7 years, and you're the first person who's taken me up on it. And he ended up offering, becoming a mentor for her. Her brother got a job for it. You know, there's been so many things that came from that connection because she had that 20 seconds of courage to ask. And you've got passion for a career in health or going to graduate school, and people like to see passion. They like to see people who are going to make a difference and be change makers, and so they'll like to talk to you. So you have all these things going for you and more. You might have exactly the kind of skills and experience that they're looking for as well. So the next steps are, I think it's important to clarify your objectives and your needs, and clarify the directions and people and the organizations that are of interest to you. Make a commitment. I'm asking you to make a commitment by being on this webinar to do informational interviews and to target and make a target of how many that you're going to do. Don't just say you're going to do some. Actually say, okay, I'm going to do 6 in the next 6 months, or I'm going to do 6 in the next 3 months, or whatever your target is. Make a target. Make sure that you organize and you make the time to do it. Identify some priority people and organizations. You can't do everybody, and get some referrals from folks about that. Go ahead and conduct the interviews and reflect on what you've learned. Again, build that system to capture your learnings and capture people in your network, and enjoy it. This is a really fun, I love informational interviews. It's great with the connection, the knowledge, the energy, and you're doing something for yourself, and you're doing something for the field and that organization. So it's a win for everybody involved. And then when you get out there, and many of you are in that position already, you do informational interviews and give other people the opportunity, because you know what? There's a flow that comes from doing this kind of work, that putting yourself in the flow of people and opportunities with others helps, and then giving back to others along the way creates the good karma, I guess, to make it all come around for everyone. So that's what I suggest. I also suggest that you would look at before we come back to your questions, there's a lot of other webinars and online blogs and things on My Health Career Navigator that you can tap into as a way to further your information in this area, and I encourage you to be able to do that. So now it's time for your questions, and I think Christina is going to read some of the questions that you've asked. We had some people submit questions in advance, and I'm going to be joined by Sunny Bernard, who's an alum of the Health Career Connection and Berkeley School of Public Health, the MPH and Master in Public Policy program, and he has worked with works with students interested in graduate schools and careers in the health field, and is a key member of the My Health Career Navigator team. So Sunny has joined us now as well. So what questions do you have?
All right, thank you, Jeff. So we have a few questions here. We are going to start with this first one. How do you express interest in an open position? If you go into an informational interview and you know that there are open positions that you would like to apply to, how do you work around that when talking with the individual without seeming overly eager about the position? Or should you not express interest in the position at all and maybe ask for general advice at the end? How do you go about navigating that type of situation?
So that's a great question. My advice would be, and you know, people all the time say, oh, Jeff, I don't want to be disingenuous and pretend I'm not interested in the position, and I'm not advocating that at all. But what I would say is that you really treat it as an informational interview, and you start by saying, you know, where you are, and you ask your questions. You know, people might ask you all right off the bat, well, gosh, you know, are you interested in any open positions we have? I mean, if so, say, yeah, I'm here for the informational interview, but I'd also be interested in those positions. Or if they don't ask you, then what I would do is at the end, after you've made your connection with them, you've developed a little bit of a relationship, you've learned more, because to be honest with you, if you do it at the end, you have hopefully asked the right questions and you've learned more about that organization and that person, so that you can even position your interest even better to be aligned with what they are interested in and what they're looking for. Then you can say, you know, gee, by the way, I did notice that you have some open positions for interns or open positions, and you know, I'm based on this interview, I'm very interested in pursuing those. How might I go about doing that? I think that's a fair thing to do. Also, before I forget, you know, I gave you some categories of the kind of questions that you can answer, but you can Google informational interview questions, and there are hundreds of sources about informational interview questions. Your colleges that you went to probably have at the Career Center, like at Berkeley, there's a book on there's a Career Center guide that has informational interview questions. It has sample letters to request informational interviews. It has sample template thank you letters and all those kind of things. So that's why I didn't spend a lot more time on the questions, because there are a lot of other places to get that information. Other questions?
Next question. We actually had a few questions coming in on overcoming fear about conducting informational interviews. So do you have any specific tips on what you can do to kind of move past that fear and take the first step in setting up the first informational interview to kind of get the ball rolling?
That's a great question, and one that I totally empathize with. It can be scary to do these informational interviews. I know that when I was younger and a student, it was a little bit scary for me to be able to do it, and so I think that's why we spend a lot of time on the fact that this is a very common thing that people do. So first of all, it's not like you're asking for something that's out of the ordinary that people will be put off by. Again, realize that they are busy, and to not take it personally if they don't do it for a while, or if they say they don't have time or something. But just realize this is something that's natural to do. It's a two-way street, that the people that do the interview, they enjoy the informational interview process most of the time. They may be looking at you as a potential employee or mentee or intern. I think also just to realize that, as one of my mentors taught me, when you're uncomfortable, you're about to grow, and that means that it's good to go beyond your comfort zone and realize that the fear is a natural human thing that comes up. but it doesn't define who you are, and that you should go ahead and have that 20 seconds of courage and push through it. And I think once you find that you do a couple, two or three of these, you'll find that going forward it'll be easier to ask for them, because you will have experienced the positive nature of them, and you will have done them so they don't seem so daunting. And you might sit there and when I used to do these, I was nervous when I was sitting there talking to people, and I felt uncomfortable, I felt self-conscious, but you just, it's like anything else that you're doing that you're uncomfortable with. You just stick through it, and it'll turn out okay. And as I mentioned, this isn't a performance. You don't have to necessarily perform in an amazing way. It's mostly that you're asking questions and you're letting other people provide you with information, and you're making good eye contact. I should have said that you're making eye contact. I suggest that you take notes to show that you are, because people, when you're writing things down, people feel like you're getting things of value. I know a lot of people of some generations don't like to take notes, but I encourage you to do that, and that you show that you're listening. So anyway, I think it's just putting yourself out there, having compassion for your nervousness potentially, but still going ahead. There's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, and I guess that's what I would advise in this particular thing, because it will be a good thing. If you have a bad experience, don't take it personally. Get back up again. Try it again. I think through preparation is another way to address the fear. So once you set it up, you've got step one. Then if you do your homework, and if you write down some questions ahead of time so that you don't feel like you have to perform on the spot, I think those are things that will help you feel less fear once it starts. And probably usually you might feel fear until the interview starts, but usually once you've said your little elevator speech and the interview starts, then sometimes the nervousness goes away, and you focus on connecting with the person and listening carefully to that person and being present. That will be helpful. Sonny, anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that you definitely got it right when you're saying that you shouldn't really be nervous. The way that you deal with the nervousness for this is just remember that this is not a job interview.
Right.
You're there to gather information. So you're curious. So you should treat it like that. Like, I'm here for fact finding. This won't make or break whether I get the job. I'm here for fact finding, and you keep it in that way, and that should help you ease some of the nervousness. I also echo the comment about preparing. So if you have a list of questions prepared, and like Jeff said, there's a lot of resources that you can go to that can give you hundreds of questions. You're not going to need 100 questions, but that will also help you, having a list prepared for you. And I think each time I talk to students about this, you have to remember that the person really does want to spend time to get to know you. And I tell students to imagine, say you have a 17-year-old kid walking up to you and saying, hey, I don't know how to apply to college. I don't know what FAFSA is. Can you help me? You probably would be able to help them. You've gone through that process. You'd be like, sure, come on in and help me out. I can help you out with that. And the same thing with these professionals. This is their way of giving back. So remember that they wouldn't have taken the informational interview if they didn't want to get to know you. So keep that in mind. And
many of the people, just to build on what Sonny said, many of the people who come speak in classes or come speak at workshops, they are actually, they're doing that, go speak at conferences. They're doing that because they want to connect with students, or they want to connect with people in their profession. They want to share what they know and what they've learned and those things. And so those are people who are more likely that when you ask them, to be people who are willing and interested in doing that kind of work.
Great. Thank you, Sonny and Jeff. So the next question is related a little bit more specifically to grad school, but I think it could also apply to jobs. Would there be any period of time that it would be inappropriate to do an informational interview in terms of if you've already applied to a grad school and you want to have an informational interview with somebody, or you've already applied to a job, or you're planning on applying to that grad school? Is there any gray area there that you should be aware of?
So I think it may depend on the nature of the graduate school program and the school itself and the people that are involved. For example, I think for many schools of public health. If you've applied to school public health, there's no problem that there may be no problem with doing an informational interview after you've applied, because the schools are still interested in learning more about. They'd like to meet you. They like the fact that you show that you're interested, and in fact, it's even a strategy to do it, because the admission, if you strategically do it before the admissions committees meet, they might have met you. Hopefully, they're impressed by you. Maybe that helps put a name with the face, in the process. And so I think it doesn't hurt to ask. If you get some pushback saying, gosh, we're in the application process now, we're in the admissions process, so we don't really do that, then don't take it personally. I do think that for medical schools, it might be somewhat different. I know I have a colleague that runs a medical school program, and he doesn't do informational interviews with people who are in the process, in the admissions process for that particular year, because he feels like it might give them a certain advantage over other people, and they have a policy of not doing that. So it may depend on the type of school, the school, and that particular individual or program. It's good to do informational interviews before you apply, because then you might have the opportunity to learn more about what that school is looking for, what that program is looking for, make a connection then, and so that's a good thing to consider as well. Sonny, what else would you say?
Well, yeah, I think it's, I did that prior to applying to master's programs. I did informational interviews so then the people could get to know me a little bit more, because you have to realize a lot of these schools get a ton of applicants, so it's just like a list of names for them. And I wanted to give a good impression when I came in, like, hey, I'm Sonny Bernard. I'm interested in the health policy management program. Can I speak to specific professors? And a lot of the schools I applied to were very open to it. So I think it's always a good idea to do that. I also think it's okay to do informational interviews after you've gotten, like, decisions and whatnot. So then you can find out about funding opportunities and things like that. See if the school, I know a lot of schools do similar things here, like here at Berkeley, where they have graduate students who serve as ambassadors for the different programs, and you can do informational interviews with them to get the 411 on housing or potential funding and things like that. So
what it's really like in that school. I had a colleague the other day who said, "Oh, I got into the DRPH program at this one school, and when I asked all the students there, I did some informational interviews with the students. Not one of them would recommend the program. So that was the program that she'd intended to go to, based on the reputation of that program and based on its geographic location, and based on that feedback from multiple students, not just one. She ended up choosing not to go to that particular school. So yeah, I think it's important, as Sonny said, after you've been admitted, to be able to do that too, because you really want to make a good, well-informed decision and see what you're getting into and who you'd be working with. As far as the job part about doing an informational interview, if you've applied for a job, I think if that's the case, if you have applied for a job and you are doing an informational interview, I think you may want to then upfront let people know that, to say, well, just to let you know, I am doing this informational interview. I have, but I did apply to a job in your organization, and that would be a good thing to declare up front, so that people know that you've done that.
All right, great, thank you. So we have one student wondering how or whether to ask more sensitive questions during an informational interview, such as how comfortable or happy a certain group of individuals, such as individuals of color or something like that, how happy those people are within the organization. So veering towards those types of questions, would you stay away from them, or is that okay to ask, and how do you go about bringing that type of thing up?
That's a great question. I think by the nature of you realizing it is a sensitive question, that's a good. I give you credit for that, and that will mean to me that you'll bring that kind of awareness to the to the informational interview. I think it really depends on. I wouldn't start out with that. I would definitely ask less sensitive kinds of questions first, to build a relationship, to get deeper in terms of your your conversation. And then I think you have to make a judgment about a couple things. One is, do you feel that you're making a good connection with that person such that they would be receptive to you asking that question? And what kind of person do they seem to be? Do they seem to be a person who's really, sharing a lot of people will share, very candid things with you, and they're not just in a selling, mode about their organization or their students. Their school. And you might just see, because you can often read how the person is being candid or being open to any kind of question that you might ask, and I think that would be something to think about. The other thing is how important is that answer to the question for you, and is this the right person to answer it? Because maybe if it's really important to you, even if you're not sure that it's a good question to ask of that person, you still might ask it, because you know what, it's still important to me to decide about this organization, and I'm going to go ahead and ask it at the appropriate time. It might also be, you might make a judgment to say, you know what, I'm not sure if this is the right person. This is an important thing for me to ask, but I'm not sure if this is the right person for me to ask. Let me not ask it, and let me figure out somebody else. So it's kind of a judgment in the moment, but if it's important to you, then find a way to get the question answered. Sonny, anything you'd add?
No, I think that you articulated that perfectly.
Okay, great. So another student just wrote in and is wondering if you have any specific tips on interviewing an individual that you have no prior knowledge of or experience. Obviously, you do your research before you go in, but you haven't been referred to them. You don't have anything in common with them. You didn't go to the same school. How do you go about jumping in cold and establishing a connection with them when, like I said, there's no referral, there was nothing to connect the two of you, and you want to try and establish that connection?
So I think that most of the things we talked about earlier, I think would still apply. I think having first of all, I think conveying some enthusiasm, which may be hard to do sometimes if you're nervous, but I think actually what I found is that when I was nervous, if I actually conveyed my enthusiasm, that actually helped me be less nervous and helped kind of make a good connection, and just being positive, even if you're not that enthusiastic, just be positive and be kind of humble but confident. But I think it's making eye contact, it's good body posture, it's listening to the person and nodding, like acknowledging, active listening back to them. It's asking some good questions and writing things down to show that you're interested in what they're saying. And I think having a good elevator speech that states your intention about why you're there and where you're coming from. I think those are all, good kinds of things. And then it's just like connecting with somebody in other situations. It's showing that you're listening. It's, I think, conveying a sincere interest in them and their organization, having them talk and share about themselves. Sharing actually makes people closer. So you disclosing and sharing about yourself in an appropriate way, and that just could be just like what you're interested in and why you're passionate about their organization and the work that they do. That's a good sharing. And then them sharing their background and sharing their interest, some of their personal story. Sometimes asking people like that to share a little bit about their personal story might be good, because when people share on a personal level, it begins to create more of a connection with people, rather than just asking about more basic kinds of organizational things.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if you haven't had connections like before, and I've done this where I've just reached out to people I have no connections to whatsoever, and what I would do is, like, what I did, like, in the past, I really did my research, and I emailed these individuals with a lot of enthusiasm saying, hey, my name is Sonny, I'm currently doing this internship, I'm returning back to school, and like I want to learn. At the time, I wanted to learn more about hospital administration, and my university had a hospital like right then and there, right there. So what I did was I reached out to the CEO and CFO, explained to them like, hey, I would love to get the opportunity to get to know you guys some. And they actually took me in. They were surprised that an undergrad would ever reach out to them, and they made an internship for me because I reached out to them. So you have that. And when I did this was years ago, ages ago, about 10 years ago. Today, you guys have LinkedIn today. So what I tell a lot of my students to do is go on. You can add someone like Jeff or me and stuff like that. Go on and do a search, and then you'll see connections that way. I have students who are interested in health policy. They go on LinkedIn, put in health policy, and then we see the people who come up who are working in that field, and so then I connect students with that professional. So you have a lot of options today, I think.
Yeah, and you also have magic words that if you are a student, I'm a student at UC Berkeley, or I'm a student at CSU Fresno, or at NYU, or whatever it is. That helps people like to talk to students, and that puts you in a different kind of a category. Or I'm a recent alum of this particular school, something like that. Or I'm an early careerist, or I'm a career changer. Something that says that where you're coming from, that gives them something to relate to as well.
So one last question here. This one is about dress. Should you dress just as professionally or more professionally maybe than you would as if it were a job interview or a grad school interview, or is it a less casual setting?
My recommendation, and I'm interested in Sunny's perspective, is that you would dress like this is an interview, and you would dress as formally as you would, and you want to come across. This is your chance to make a impression with this individual, and you want to come across in the most professional way that you can. And for example, I have one colleague who runs a very important graduate program that a lot of students are interested in, and she says, I agree to meet with people for informational interviews, but I think of it as an interview, and I think people should as well, that they should come dressed professionally with questions, really well prepared. And so I wouldn't do that. I would think about the nature of the organization. Part of doing your homework might be, do you know what the dress code is in that particular organization? Because, walking into a place that is really a casual organization where people are wearing blue jeans and T-shirts and have dogs in the office and wearing a suit, you wearing a suit might be a little bit awkward, but still maybe not, because it still may convey your professionalism. And if you're a younger person, sometimes being dressed more professionally actually still makes you come across in a way that might make a better impression than if not. So I would probably err on the side of dressing more professionally and treating it in a more professional manner. Sonny, what about you?
I echo that sentiment as well. So no flip-flops or T-shirts or anything like that. And it's kind of interesting because this is not a job interview, but you want to treat it as an interview. So you do want to put your best foot forward and definitely have, like Jeff said, a notebook ready to take down notes. So you're able to convey you're all about your business, right? You're a real professional. You're really here to find information. And so business casual or business professional is what I would recommend.
Yeah, and even if you're coming from class or something like that, and you're rushing from class, and you've got your backpack with you, and you've got those things, that's all fine. But you do want to look. You do want to look. This is your chance to make a first impression and a lasting impression with people, and so you want to look your best. You also want to be on time and not panicked. So give yourself enough time to find the place and park or walk from the public transportation. And these days, a lot of organizations require you to sign in, through security, and sometimes there's a line to do that, and they require you to show your ID and signing, anyway. So sometimes you've got to give yourself extra. I would give yourself extra time for those kinds of things to take place, so that you're you get there, you're relaxed, you're ready when they're ready.
All right, thank you. And that's all we have for today, but feel free to email us with any other questions. And just a reminder that this is our first webinar in a series of webinars. So for next week, if you'd like to join us, we are having a webinar on grad school, and we'll go over a lot of common questions that people have about grad school, and we'll help you figure out how to develop the right action plan in pursuing your path in that in grad school.
Okay, with that, I want to thank you all for participating. I want to thank Sonny for being a panelist, and he'll be part of future webinars, and thank Christina for organizing this and keeping us all on track. So with that, have a great evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next MyHCN webinars. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.